Quincy Jones was a beloved music maestro of American music whose career stretched over 7 decades and gave us everything from jazz songs to Vibe magazine to Michael Jackson's Thriller to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. With 28 Grammy wins from 80 nominations, creatively, he was that dude. But when it came to his personal life, he was a lover, which clearly made him a father. Quincy Jones once said, quote, "I love women, every touch, every whisper, every glance, every sense, every drop of them. To me, loving a woman is one of the most natural, blissful, life-enhancing, and dare I say it, religious acts in the world." Now, we know he meant that because he had 7 children from 5 different women. Quincy Jones was the Nick Cannon, Lil Wayne, and Cam Newton of yesterday. But that's not what people think about when they think about him. They remember his professional accomplishments, and rightfully so. But you know what we're going to do here. We are going to reflect on his love life, and soon I'll tell you all about it. Welcome to another episode of I'll Tell You What, the podcast that's all love, Black history. I'm Ashley, your favorite raconteuse that shares these stories with you every single Monday. So make sure you catch them all. Subscribe on the tube if you hit the notification button so you know when new episodes are dropped. Follow us everywhere you can. We're on every podcast platform basically. And if you really want to support the show, you can become an official All Runner by joining us on Patreon. That way you get more Love Black History almost every single day. With that being said, let's begin with the story of Quincy and his high school sweetheart, Jerry. As a high schooler, Quincy met Jerry Caldwell in Seattle in the early 1950s, back when he was a budding musician. Jerry wrote that she saw him for the first time during rehearsals, and she turned in the direction of her homegirl and said, quote, "I'm in love." But Jerry was white, and Quincy was obviously black, and so this would be a problem. Her mom initially disapproved of the relationship until she met him. She told Jerry, quote, "I understand why you love him." Now, Jerry's dad never approved because, well, white. Despite being kicked out of multiple sororities and being stripped of her legacy status, Jerry didn't care. She loved her some Quincy, and she wanted to be with him. In his autobiography, Quincy reflects on those years with a certain tenderness, describing Jerry as the person who believed in his dream before anyone else did. He was trying to get his music career going, and she supported him, even though they were mostly broke in those early days. Their young relationship consisted of struggle, racism, but most of all, love. They would get denied for housing and get turned down for a marriage certificate just because of the difference in their race. But their love persisted. Together, they left Seattle and moved to New York, obviously for Quincy's career. It helped because then Quincy was able to work with legends like Ray Charles, Count Basie, and Dizzy Gillespie, and his career was taking off faster than either one of them anticipated. Jerry stood by Quincy's side, though, and adjusted to a life that was increasingly filled with long nights, smoky clubs, and endless rehearsals. So as Quincy's star rose, the pressures of the industry began to weigh on their marriage. This opened the door for his eye to wander and the rest of his body to follow suit. He wrote, quote, "I did my best to keep it from Jerry at first. Jerry would field calls from women at all hours of the day, and I would tell her, such and such needs me to do a song for her, or such and such is Basie's secretary. But she knew the truth. The woman who loves you always knows." He wrote about this one time when he was gallivanting with the Dinah Washington and didn't make it home until like 11 a.m. He was exhausted, but tried staying up because he had a feeling that Dinah would call his house phone, and she did. But Jerry answered first and heard the admission of Dinah basically saying that they had bumped parts the night before. That was not the only time Jerry would catch Quincy in the act. It even happened after she had given birth to their daughter, Jolie. I guess you could say the constant infidelities and the lifestyle change due to his job are what contributed to the end of their marriage. By 1964, their 7-year marriage had officially come to an end. Quincy had another child, Rachel, by another woman, Carol, by that point. He wrote that his divorce to Jerry was finalized in 1966. But when reflecting on that marriage, he wrote, quote, "Many women would have given up on the relationship years earlier. Jerry had hung in for way too long. There is only one first time, and we were both reluctant to let go." Now, after that, Quincy would fall for a model named Ola. I'll tell you about that marriage soon enough. It was 1966, Queens, New York. Quincy met the woman that would be his second wife after going to a party with Frank Sinatra. Quincy wrote in his memoir, quote, "I saw a young woman, a tall fox, just drop dead beautiful. She was about 19, with big eyes you could swim in, and lashes as long as her legs. The woman was a Ford model from Sweden named Ola Anderson. Now, I couldn't find a free photo of young Ola, so if you want to see it, you need to go ahead and Google her or contribute a coin so I can afford these photos." But anywho, they began to date, and the following year, in 1967, they were married. Ola and Quincy had 2 children, Martina, affectionately known as Tina, and Quincy III, who would be known as Snoop. The couple traveled frequently, creating a home that straddled both Los Angeles and Stockholm, and everywhere Quincy's career took them. However, his career demands began to strain their relationship. The music scene, Hollywood, and international travel kept pulling him away from their family. Quincy wrote, quote, "Just as my career began to move forward, my relationship with Ola was starting to show cracks. I self-righteously thought that because I'd made a commitment to one woman after spending several years as a dog, everything would be fine. But the distance, both literal and emotional, would become hard for Ola, who was raising their children and managing the household, often on her own. Eventually, she took the kids to Sweden and didn't come back for a while, which to Quincy meant their marriage was over. They would get a divorce in 1974, but Quincy would be all right because literally the very next day, he would marry his third wife, Peggy Lipton. Quincy met Peggy Lipton in 1968. It was on a couple's trip to the Bahamas, and he was invited by Sidney Poitier and his girlfriend. Now, Quincy was there with his wife, Ola, and Sammy Davis Jr. arrived with Peggy. Jet magazine described their relationship as a whirlwind romance, but I don't really know if they were really together like that. Or maybe so, who knows. But it seems like she was there on a rebound trip because she had just broken up with her ex. Actually, during the trip, she left Sammy to go back to her ex, but that might have actually opened the door for Sammy to get with his third wife, Altavis. But we're not here to talk about that. We're talking about Quincy and Peggy. So that was then. Quincy would reconnect with Peggy later. Based off Quincy's memoir, it seemed like Peggy had a crush on Quincy and asked his oldest daughter, Jolie, about him. Jolie would coordinate a dinner, and the rest was history. Quincy wrote, quote, "Falling in love with Peggy was like a breath of fresh air." Peggy said, quote, "And I didn't meet him again till after he had broken up with his second wife. And that was maybe almost 2 years later. So I kind of looked at him maybe as baby making material because he always used to say to me, 'I want a baby.' And they would eventually have a baby. But this would be after he would move into her house, as she was an actress on the TV show The Mod Squad. And their first child, Hueido, was born in March 1974, and then 6 months after that is when they got married. And 2 years later, they would have another daughter that we all know as Rashida Jones. Quincy, who grew up without his mother present and a very toxic stepmother, often expressed that his marriage to Peggy allowed him to experience a kind of love he hadn't felt before, one anchored by family and a sense of home. She took a break from acting to be a mom, and that was something he greatly appreciated. He wrote, quote, "All her desires, her focus, she gave to her family and to me so that I could get on with my career." However, their marriage wasn't without its trials. Quincy's relentless drive in the music industry often kept him away from home, and Peggy, who was also dealing with her own personal struggles, found the demands of balancing family and career overwhelming. In later years, Quincy admitted, quote, "We were both searching for something. I think we found it in each other, but life sometimes has its own plans." Are you seeing a pattern here? Yeah. The couple would separate in the late 1980s, with Quincy being the primary parent of Kidada and Peggy would be the primary parent of Rashida. Despite their marriage ending, though, their love for each other never truly faded. Even after their divorce in 1990, Peggy and Quincy remained close friends and co-parents with a deep respect for one another. Peggy wrote, quote, "We had a good marriage. We both grew from the relationship. I still love him from afar. We loved more in our 14 years than most do in a lifetime." So when Peggy passed away in 2019 from a 15-year battle with colon cancer, Quincy honored her in a post on Instagram where he said, quote, "We shared many beautiful memories, and most importantly, we share two incredible daughters. Regardless of the paths that our lives took us on, I can say with utmost certainty that love is eternal." Their relationship may have shifted over the years, but Quincy and Peggy's love for one another was built on mutual respect, understanding, and a lasting connection that obviously went beyond marriage. But after Peggy, Quincy would begin a relationship with actress and model Nastasia Kinski. Quincy and Nastasia's relationship began in the early 1990s, at a time when Quincy was already accomplished in the music world. Nastasia was a known actress and model, renowned for her beauty and past relationship with director Roman Polanski. Now, side note, y'all know anything about that? She dated Roman when she was 15 and he was 43. She denied it, but he didn't. But anywho, her relationship with Quincy was interesting. Not only was there a 28-year age gap, yes, another one, but they came from vastly different worlds. Quincy was a Black music icon from the United States, and Nastasia was a German actress. Now, differences sometimes don't matter when the heart is involved. Their relationship lasted for 3 years, and they had a daughter together, Kenya Quincy Jones, who would later become a successful model. Quincy was no stranger to being a father, but his relationship with Nastasia added a new layer to his role as a dad. His daughter Rashida wrote, quote, "Kenya's getting the best of him now, every drop. He spends a lot of time with her because he now knows what he needs from her as a father." While his 6 other children did not receive that same amount of attention from their dad, it seems he tried making up for it with his youngest. In a 2015 interview with The Telegraph, Nastasia reflected on her relationship with Quincy, describing it as, quote, "fine." She once said, quote, "I never had a family, and what I always wanted was my family." For Nastasia, having a family was a dream she cherished deeply, and her relationship with Quincy allowed her to continue to evolve in that role as a mother, as she already had a child from her previous marriage. Now, with her kids, she found that sense of family that she had always longed for. However, Quincy and Nastasia's relationship wasn't without its challenges, as you probably figured, and ultimately their relationship didn't last, but they remained friends and even neighbors. Now, as we wrap, please know that Quincy Jones, despite his marriages and committed relationships, was very much a player. White women hated to see Quincy Jones coming. I'm kidding. So, Quincy was known not only for his musical genius, but also for his captivating charm, which brought him close to some of the most intriguing women in Hollywood and beyond. Most of them were white, though. But Quincy's romantic life was more varied than many people would think. Despite Tupac, before he was Quincy's daughter Kidada's fiance, basically saying all Quincy does is stick his D in white bees and make effed up kids, he said he never dated anyone because of their race. Quincy wrote, quote, "You never know who you're gonna fall in love with. Love is like ice cream, and I don't care if it's French vanilla or chocolate chip or maple walnut or lemon sorbet." He also said, quote, "When I look at a woman, race is the last thing I'm looking at. I'm checking out her legs, her pretty eyes, her whatever, how she expresses herself, how she relates to me." So in that infamous 2018 interview with GQ, he continued to dismiss the common assumption that he only dated blonde women, pointing to a former flame, an actress and dancer named Marpessa Dawn. Quincy said, quote, "Well, because I had 3 white wives, they stereotype, you know? But they were wrong like a MF, man. You ever see Black Orpheus? That was my old lady, Marpessa Dawn. Gorgeous lady, man." At the same time, he was also dating another exceptional woman, Trinidadian-born jazz singer Hazel Scott, after she divorced Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And I already told y'all that he mentioned his brief affair with Dinah Washington. Now, spoiler alert. Some of the following women I'm going to tell you about, I couldn't find images of because, or rather I could, but I wasn't going to pay for them. So if you really want to see them, you need to Google or contribute so I can pay for these very expensive Getty images. Anywho, he also went on to date his publicist, Lysette Weiner DeRoe, whom he met in 1995. Their relationship quickly went from professional to romantic, lasting 6 years. However, their relationship ended when they realized they wanted different things. Lysette wanted kids, while Quincy was done with that stage of his life. And then there was the rumored connection with Kimberly Conrad, a playmate and former wife of Hugh Hefner. But perhaps the most surprising revelation was in 2018 when Quincy shared he once went on a date with Ivanka Trump. Now, reflecting on that, he said, quote, "She had the most beautiful legs I ever saw in my life." Wrong father, though. While their interaction didn't lead to a relationship, Quincy's openness about it further just proves that he loves sharing the stories of his life, and we all love benefiting from said knowledge. And at that time of that GQ interview, he also mentioned at his big age of 85, he was currently dating 22 women. All in all, Quincy Jones's marriages and love life mirrored the color and depth of his entertainment career. Now, just as his career crossed boundaries and genres, his relationships spanned cultures, continents, and decades, enriching his life with diverse experiences and perspectives. That's a way of putting it. Now that concludes the love story of Quincy Jones. If you're interested in his life, because I swear this is really just a very small fragment of it, well, sort of. If you want to know more about him in terms of his accomplishments, his upbringing, etc., I would highly suggest you read his memoir, as well as some of the other pieces that aided my research. I will share the links to those in the notes below, and they'll also be on I'llTellYouWhat.com. All right, y'all, take care, and I'll see you in the pews.